a place to clean the free? Through the access to the sink.
District 1 Supervisor Aleppo.
Linda Gonzalez, alternate.
District 2 Supervisor Church. District 3 Supervisor Lopez.
Priscilla Barba, alternate.
District 4 Supervisor Askew. District 5 Supervisor Adams. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Potter present.
City of Del Rey Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield. City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Present.
City of Pacific Grove.
Present.
City of Salinas.
Here.
City of San City. City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad. Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Here.
Monterey Bay Air Resource District.
Here.
Monterey Regional Airport District.
Here.
Monterey Salinas Transit.
Here.
City of Watsonville. CSUMB. Chair, would you have a quorum?
All right, thank you. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, again. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Just for the board to know, I will be leaving at 10:15 and Dave Potter will be taking over for the rest of the meeting. At this time, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on any item not on the agenda? Again, I'll ask, is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on any item not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there any members of the board that can pull any items from the consent agenda?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to pull just for comments, 3.4.1. I don't need a presentation, just a comment.
Just comment. Do you mind if we take them all as a vote and then comment after?
That will be fine.
Chair, I would like to pull 3.4.2. Just have a question on that.
So we'll go ahead and do 3.4.1, 3.4.2. Is there any member of the public that can speak on any of the consent agenda items? And I'll ask, is there any member of the public that can speak on any of the consent agenda items? Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring this back to board for action of the consent agenda, except for 3.4.1 and 3.4.2.
Move approval. Second.
First, Mr. Oglesby, who said second? Second with Potter, roll call.
District 1 Alternate Gonzalez.
Yes.
District 2 Supervisor Church.
Aye.
District 3 Alternate Barba.
Yes.
District 4 Supervisor Askew. District 5 Supervisor Adams. City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rey Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield. City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of San City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll start with 3.4.1. Ed?
Yeah, thank you. The only purpose I have of making comment is I just wanted to celebrate the action. And I know that when sometimes things are on the consent agenda, they're not as obvious, but we're not doing that in today's meeting because it's a time management thing. But we've already talked about it, fully support it. But with a $14 million project, it feels a little funny leaving it on consent agenda. So I just wanted to call that out and say that this is something to be excited about, celebrate, and to make sure that we share this with our constituents. But I just didn't want it to not be called out because it's too significant for the TAMC agency and for the communities that will benefit out of it. So I just want to make the comment and not let it sit behind the scenes, but put it right out front.
Thank you, Ed. That's a great comment. And now move to 3.4.2, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, when the final construction plans came out for Fortag, we had a pretty robust outreach, and any issues that were identified by the public or by the city of Delray Oaks pretty much have been addressed. But there are two issues that I've been working with Michael Zeller about that kind of still outstanding. And I just want to make sure that before it goes out to bid, those issues, if they can be resolved, modified, can still be part of what goes forward before it goes to bid. Like,
Good morning, Mike Zeller, Director of Programming Project Delivery. So the two issues that I've been working with Mayor Donaldson on, one is a bike rack at Safeway. This is again related to the Fortag project at Canyon Del Rey. There's a Safeway shopping center on Canyon Del Rey and Fremont Boulevard. We had reached out to the store manager to let them know about our active transportation support program, where we have funds for bike racks, or possibly this is something that can be incorporated into the project to place a bike rack at the Safeway shopping center. The other issue was at Carlton Drive. If you recall, there's a parklet that will be constructed as part of this project with a sidewalk that switchbacks up to handle the grades at this location. There are some concerns about people potentially walking through a vegetated area rather than going into the proper entrance of the switchback, creating basically an informal trail. There is a proposal of creating a sidewalk up Work Street from Carlton. The potential issue there, when I spoke with our engineers about it at GHD, is that our environmental boundary does not extend very far up Work Street. So you would essentially have a sidewalk that abruptly stops. There's also some slope issues that create ADA issues, I believe, as well as some drainage. Our proposal was to address the people walking through vegetated area, is to put up as part of the project some low fencing, basically some stakes with some chains or a rope between them to deter people from walking through, and then also to include some signage that calls this out as a restoration area, asking people not to walk through it, and directing them to the proper entrance. So those are things that we can continue to discuss and try to work through as before the project finally goes out to bid.
okay, I just want to make sure, is the sidewalk still a possibility? Is that something that we can continue to discuss? And if so, can that be incorporated into the final design that goes out to bid?
Speaking with GHD about that, it sounded like there were certain challenges with that that made it not possible to include it in the project. But again, I can go back and get more information from them, and see if this is something that we can continue to look at.
Okay, that's great. I would like to discuss that further with you.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. And also, Michael, thanks for all the great work that you've done. I mean, like I said, we had that outreach and it went very well, and that's due in large part because of what you did and your team, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to do that.
I think two quick things. One thing is I want to appreciate Ed for bringing that up. I mean, no matter how many times we talk about $14 million, we should highlight the final approval of that in the business item, right? I don't think we're that large. The $14 million is just a routine consent agenda, so I appreciate that. But going back to this point over here, I understand all that was said, but I think we need to do a little bit more to make sure that the city of Delray Oaks is comfortable with what's going on in their community. And it seems as though, you know, voting for this, we're just bypassing the concerns that they have. So I hear a lot about, you know, the the consultants this, the consultants that are not sure how it can work, they should know that before it comes to this meeting. And it shouldn't be a question that they have to ask right before we take a vote on it. Because I know the next section, as they work their way in a couple of years through Seaside, it's not going to be, I have to get it here in front of you guys and say, whoa, 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 my concerns are not being met. And so we had to figure that out about how to make sure that they're comfortable coming here, that all their questions have been pushed as far as they can. And that gives us more information about what we want to do as a board. Just information.
No, I'm very, very valid point. So Todd, if this was pushed to August, because that'd be our next meeting,
It's,
is there any time sensitive issues?
it
here?
is, well, it's time sensitive, so we can get the project started in construction. And this issue is something that came up as we had some follow-up meetings about the final design and met with community, had a very robust community engagement. And it is getting into an area where you start to deal with scope creep, where you're starting to go outside of the project. And it's not that that's not valid as an issue, it's just that you have to, you do need to decide where the project stops and where the next issue starts. And so that's what happens when you set an environmental boundary to evaluate the footprint of a project, and you start to go beyond that. And there's been different times where we've done additional environmental work when we've identified additional issues that have to be considered. But we also need to decide, where's the limit of the boundary of the project, and what should be included in this project and what might be included in a separate project. So to stop this now and delay it by potential several months I would hope that we would do that. And I'm not saying that we can't do this. I think we just need to really look at whether this is feasible within this project or it needs to be part of a follow-up project.
And I understand what you're saying about, project creep. I'm just looking at a point in time where before it goes out to bid, there are two issues. They're not real significant, but I want to just make sure they're addressed before it goes out to bid. And, we have this opportunity, and that's where I wanted to catch that. And that's why I'm bringing it to the board's attention. I don't think it's something that needs to slow down the process, but we do have that opportunity right now before it goes out to bid, that we have two potential issues that can be addressed. And that's my point.
Yeah, and those issues are related to the project, but they're not related to this action. I mean, you could stop this action in order to require that specific sidewalk issue to be resolved, like guarantee that it's part of this project. We could stop right now and go back and figure it out, but that would delay the project and the whole project. Or we can continue to work with consultants to see if there's a way we can include it. And we're talking more of within the environmental footprint of the existing project, which would be a short fencing to keep people from crossing through the landscaped area that is part of the issue that's brought up. So that's my concern about making that small sidewalk issue be the determinant of whether we move forward with this project. And so this project goes to CTC for construction allocations today or tomorrow. I was going to announce that. So I was going to talk about the business. I was going to announce that in my executive director's report. And then we're on the clock to get to a contractor under contract. So there is a lot of time sensitive issues at this point for this. And we're not giving up or saying we can't do this. It's just, I can't say that we can guarantee that we can include the additional sidewalk in this project at this point. It really does depend on if it's in the scope of the footprint of the project and what else we can do to resolve the concern.
Yeah, and I'm not looking to delay the project. I just, once again, we have this opportunity to address a very small portion of it. And, I guess I'm looking to what is the degree of that concern being considered and ultimately modified.
if we can modify it, 100% will take care of it. I mean, it's not trying to avoid the issue. It's whether it can be covered in as part of the project. Mike wants to add to it.
Yeah, and if I could speak to kind of the timing that we have, this action, as along with what Executive Director Monk mentioned with the CTC giving us the funding allocation today or tomorrow. There's a few more steps that we need to go through before we actually bid the project. So we need to get our federal authorization. We need to get some other approvals from Caltrans before we go out. So the timeline for bidding the project, we have bid openings scheduled for mid-October. So that means that a big package would go out likely beginning of September. So we do have some time to work on this and to consider this before it does go out to bid. It's not, the action today and we go out to bid tomorrow. So we have some time to consider, keep discussing this.
Okay, and I'll continue to work with you on that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear some more concerns from the executive director and his team about resolving these two issues. I heard about a simple bike rack. I call it simple, but it's a bike rack, and I understand the complexities with laying out a sidewalk, right? It's not as simple as it may sound. I just want to hear more commitment to work with, trying to do it. At first, I just heard a lot of, with respect, hey, we'll talk to the consultant to see if it can be done or not. We as a group should be supporting, trying to get these two things in there if it can be done. That's all I was asking for. And, we know it's not going to stop today, but that doesn't mean there shouldn't be some commitment to, helping the city move this project through their community, knowing the controversies that were had over there.
100% understand, and I think we just bypass the bike rack because I think that's easy to resolve. It should be, and then the sidewalk is just some of the issues related to how does it fit with the project and whether it's because sidewalks involve drainage and curb and gutter, and I mean it gets big.
I know, I walk that area and we all got the same challenges when it comes to a little strip of sidewalk. All I'm saying is just, I didn't hear TAMC's commitment to try to work with them a little bit better. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. And if there's any way possible that we can resolve it as either with within the environmental footprint of the project, we will.
Any questions or comments? Any member of the public like to comment on 3.4.1 or 3.4.2? Again, I'll ask any member of the public to comment on 3.4.1 or 3.4.2. Hearing and seeing none. I think first with Potter,
Second.
second with Fedori. And I believe that Todd, you got plenty of direction and understanding.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
District 1, alternate Gonzalez.
Yes.
District 2, Supervisor Church.
Aye.
District 3, alternate Barba.
Yes.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Alternate Anderson, yes.
District 5, Supervisor Adams. City of Carmel by the Sea. City of Del Rey Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzalez.
Aye.
City of Greenfield. City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to item 4, receive an update on state and federal legislative activities and adopt positions on legislation. Christina?
Good morning, Christina Watson, Director of Planning, and on the Zoom today, we have our consultants in Sacramento and Washington, DC. We're going to start today with Gus Curry in Sacramento with an update on state legislative activities.
Thank you so much, Christina. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Gus Corey, Legislative Advocate for TAMC. Pleasure to be with you this morning. I come bearing mostly good news this morning. So Governor Newsom has signed the fiscal year 23-24 state budget. The good news with that is even with what was a $31 billion deficit, transportation is fairly unharmed because we do not rely upon general fund resources. The Transit Association, along with TAMC and others, had advocated for some general fund resources for public transportation. So the big three, basically the governor, the Assembly Speaker, currently Anthony Rendon, but as of Friday, it'll be Assemblymember Robert Rivas. And then Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins had agreed to provide public transportation with a $4 billion augmentation over the next 2 fiscal years. So $2 billion for fiscal year 23-24 and $2 billion for fiscal year 24-25. That is fully flexible to be used for operations or capital purposes. So that will help out MST, for example, in supplementing its current service. We work with the Self-Help Counties Coalition. The trailer bills are still pending before the governor, but there's a current fee that Caltrans charges. It's an oversight fee because we're a self-help county. So we have measure funds that we contribute on the state highway system. And this fee, it used to be capped at 10%. And then that cap had expired in January. But we're pleased to report that through Senate Bill 125, that cap 10% will be permanent, and that will save us really millions of dollars on being able to execute on our Measure X priorities. And so that will be pending before the governor's before the governor. And a lot of credit again goes to self-help counties for leading the charge on that. We work with PEG, the professional engineers in California government, basically the labor union for Caltrans to try to get that done as well. And then the great news is that through Assemblymember Addis and also a little bit of an assist from Senator Laird, you would think that there weren't any resources for us to be able to get a member's request, but we were able to pull off getting a $1 million members request that's earmarked for Elkhorn Slough. So this is for pre-construction activities, primarily environmental, to get us through CEQA. And that is also going to be pending before the governor. And so that's a big deal. These dollars for capital, typically, those are the dollars that we always go after for statewide competitive grants, but the pre-construction funds are pretty limited. And so being able to get that during a downturn in the economy is a big deal. And I just want to credit TAMC staff for being able to kind of compile this. We huddled up and we're thinking of different opportunities that we could pursue this year. And this was one that seemed to make sense. And so I'm glad that, we're identified in the budget for that purpose. So on legislation, there's just a couple items for your consideration. We've spoken ad nauseum in the past about implementation of the governor's climate action plan for transportation infrastructure, also known as CAPTI. So this is emphasizing investments into multimodal choices instead of just relying on the state highway system to accommodate mobility in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so there's only one bill that's moving through the process right now in that regard, and that's Assembly Bill 7, which looks to codify CAPTI. But there's a problematic provision. For all intents and purposes, most of the bill is okay because we are working in order to try to accelerate investments into zero emission vehicles, wean our dependence off of petroleum. We look for opportunities to provide more equity in our decisions on how we fund our transportation system, et cetera. But there's one provision in the bill that it says to promote projects that do not significantly increase vehicle miles traveled. And that's not always possible, given some of our grave concerns on US 101, particularly south of Salinas, and some of the fatalities that have been experienced there, especially by disadvantaged communities especially, the fact that we facilitate goods movement, not just for the region, but for the entire state and country, sometimes you can't always accommodate making that multimodal investment. We still need to take care of the state highway system. So we're in conversations with the author, current Assembly Chair Laura Friedman, on if she's willing to amend that provision so that we're not disadvantaged from continuing to apply for statewide grants, because we can only leverage so much with our Measure X dollars. We need the state as a partner to bring these projects to fruition. And so those projects are ongoing, but the bill is over on the Senate side for consideration in a couple of weeks before the legislature goes on recess on July 14th. And then the second bill for your consideration that's in your packet is Assembly Bill 825. This just undermines local control because it prohibits a local authority from prohibiting operation of a bicycle on a sidewalk adjacent to a highway. So it seems like, you should be making these types of decisions. Your constituencies and respecting the state and local government relationship. And so we're asking for an opposed position on that bill. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions or entertain any comments that you or board members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Board members? Great. And Christina, just for clarification, the bicycle one also went to the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee as well for their input. Is
Yes, the bicycle committee and the executive committee both voted to oppose that bill.
there any member of the public like to speak on any of these items? And I'll ask, is there any member of the public to speak on any of these items? Hearing and seeing none, I'll bring this back to the board for action.
Move approval of the state agenda.
Second.
First with Potter, second with Smith. Roll call, please. Oh, sorry, I forgot about the federal portion. Paul, please.
They don't have action pending on their.
We do have pending action, but we'll finish with our report. I do apologize, Paul.
Hold on, Eloise.
Yes.
You want Paul to go ahead?
Yes.
Okay.
We wouldn't take the vote after the Fed
Yes.
report.
That's correct.
So Paul and Jim Davenport are on the line now to present an update on federal legislative activities. I'm not sure which of you is starting.
Thanks, Christina. We're not smiling quite as much as Gus was. If we were, I would do the report, but since we're not, I'll pass it off to Jim.
All right, thank you, Paul, for that nice setup. I appreciate that. So we don't have this too much to say today, but just report on the status of where things are. As you all know, in the early days of June, Congress did lift the debt ceiling. Those negotiations had put all work on appropriations bills on pause because the House and the Senate were waiting to get, see what came out of that to determine how they're going to move forward with appropriations as it relates to both discretionary spending, domestic spending, and defense. The agreement that they came up with was to keep basically keep domestic discretionary spending at FY23 levels, which is somewhat of a minor cut because with inflation, FY24 levels, they were going to keep FY24 levels at 23 levels. So that would have been a minor cut because with inflation, 24 levels would be higher. As the House has now started to move forward again with writing the appropriations bills, and unfortunately, they've decided that the FY23 levels that they agreed upon, 24 levels that they agreed upon in the debt ceiling negotiations are the ceiling, not the floor. So the House is actually going to write bills with even deeper cuts. And as it pertains to TAMC, the one bill that your attention is always on is the Transportation HUD bill. And the House Appropriations Committee plans to write that bill with a 25% cut from last year. So that's quite a deep cut. I don't recall in all my years seeing a bill written to those levels. The good news is the Senate plans to move forward in more bipartisan fashion and more in line with what they agreed upon, and plans to write the FY24 transportation appropriations bill at a level similar to last year's. And that, of course, is where TAMC's earmark lies with Senator Padilla's request to that committee. What I think concerns Paul and I is the fact that the Senate is going to have one level that's, you know, I'll call it a normal level that was agreed upon. And the House is going to have this drastic cut to transportation. And of course, the House and the Senate appropriators have to come together at the end of the year and agree upon a final bill, which they always do. But this year, I think Paul and I see this as a bit more of a mess or a train wreck as they try to resolve their differences. And there's one more wrinkle to that. They have decided in the debt ceiling negotiations that if they don't pass the bills by January 1 of next year, then there will be an additional 1% cut across the board on any bills that are captured under a continuing resolution. So they usually get the bills done by the end of the calendar year. I say usually. There was a year, I think 2 years ago, they didn't get it done until March of the following year. So the end of the year is going to be very interesting. Where Paul and I have our attention right now is the markups on the Senate side. The transportation appropriations bill is supposed to be marked up. I think I saw it by the 3rd week of July. So we should hopefully know by, we'll just say the end of July, whether TAMC's project is included in that bill. So, you know, once we get to that phase, we should have some news for you. And then afterwards, you know, we'll join the fray in the conference negotiations and see how things turn out. So having set that table, Paul, anything more to add?
I really think you got all of it, Jim.
All right, any questions on
Thank
our
you,
stuff?
Jim. Board members, any questions, comments? Any member of the public or speak on the federal update? Again, I'll ask any member of the public to speak on the federal update. Hearing and seeing none.
So I'll amend my motion and to include the conclusion of the federal report.
Thank you.
Second, again, I'll follow Dave Potter and follow his lead and agree.
First with Potter, second with Smith. Roll call, please.
District 1, alternate Gonzalez.
Yes.
District 2, Supervisor Church.
Aye.
District 3, alternate Barba.
Yes.
District 4, alternate Anderson.
Yes.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rio.
Aye.
City of Gonzalez.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eloise. We'll now move on to item 5, the Measure X Senior and Disabled Transportation Cycle 3 Award Recommendations. And this will be Aaron.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Aaron Hernandez. I'm an assistant transportation planner with the agency. And today I am going to go over you with our Measure X Senior and Disabled Transportation Program. Right now, we are right about to head into cycle 3 of the program, and I'm going to present to you the recipients who will receive funding for cycle 3. Okay. So a brief overview of the program. So back in 2016, when voters approved the Measure X ballot, one of the program areas included in the ballot is senior and disabled Senior Disabled Transportation Program. What this program intends is to provide is to increase transportation services for the senior population and folks with disabilities who don't necessarily have other means of transportation options. The senior population is ever so increasing in Monterey County. And since Monterey County is such a vast region with a lot of areas limited to transportation, the program intends to address those issues. And so this program is basically solely focused on working with nonprofits who can provide such services, or whether if it's a direct transportation service or a transportation program to encourage seniors and folks with disabilities to use various transportation options. And throughout, and in the ballot also, basically throughout the 30 years of Measure X, $15 million is allocated to this program, or $500,000 per year. And right now we are entering cycle 3 of the program. So every cycle so far has been a 3-year cycle period since the beginning of Measure X. Cycle 2 right now is just ending in a few days at the end of June. Cycle 3 will go on from 2023 all the way to 2026. And we received 5 returning applications from both previous cycles submitted on the due date for December 1st of last year. And evaluating these recipients requires quite an extensive process. The recipients will basically from mid of last year, the board approved the program guidelines for cycle 3 and released a call for projects, which began in October and then due in December. And then from there, as a review process, a grant review committee composing of the Citizens Oversight Committee, the Mobility Advisory Committee, and TAMC staff got together to review and score each of the applications based on this ranking criteria here. And what the grant review committee and the Measure and Citizens Oversight Committee do then is then evaluate the funding amounts that each recipient would see and whether they would qualify for this funding. And so the Citizens Oversight Committee is basically recommending, which I'll go on each applicant, the funding for all 5 applications that we received. So starting with our, so the list I'll be going is actually the list of ranked applicants that received like the most score, the highest score. So starting with Partnership for Children, who received the highest score, they will continue to be working on their project for transportation services with children living with serious illnesses. And basically the scope of that project is that Partnership with Children provides direct service, professional drive service for children with disabilities and illnesses up to specialized bay children hospitals like in Sanford. And if, say, the parents of that child is able to take their child themselves, then, but they just can't afford the money to take their child because of gas prices and such, Partnership for Children does provide a gas card subsidy through this Measure X funding, and they'll be receiving $345,000 for this upcoming cycle. And then next we have ITN Monterey County, the Independent Transportation Network of Monterey County. Kind of like to call them the specialized Uber for seniors. But they provide arm-to-arm, door-to-door services for seniors in the majority of parts of Monterey County. Their main focus for this cycle is to continue expanding efforts to provide services in North and South County. Throughout cycle 2, through a range of outreach meetings and steering committee meetings, which actually Mike is a part of one of them. ITN works with the Alliance on Aging to see like what are the best ways that they could recruit seniors to use their services. And in addition, they rely heavily on volunteer drivers as well. So that is pretty much like their main scope, what they want to focus on, as well as increasing those efforts in North and South County as the project continues to build and grow. And then next, we got Alliance on Aging. Alliance on Aging, so the prior to provides a form of transportation service. Alliance on Aging is more of a resource for transportation and connecting transportation services to seniors. They work a lot with MST in terms of connecting to MST's mobility programs. In their cycle 3 period, one of their goals is to train seniors who connect with the Alliance on Aging, to train them on the Better Bus Network. As for many seniors, could be a entirely new system that they would have to go through, but Alliance on Aging provides those kinds of services. And in addition, they work a lot with ITN, and it's one of their main goals as well to expand those outreach efforts in North and South County on not just helping to expand ITN's project, but also various other projects and resources that folks in these areas can also get access to. Then next, we have the Blind and Visually Impaired Center. They actually received funding back in cycle 1, but then in cycle 2, they weren't able to. And what their goal is for this cycle is to offer orientation and mobility trainings. What that is basically through their clients who have visual impairments, they actually have a mobility specialist visit the clients so as to assist them with having to navigate the transportation network, particularly a lot of from our review process that we did. The Blind Vision Impaired Center noted that a lot of the clients rely on MST's network, since MST's network is quite well ADA compliant and very assistive with people with visual impairments. So one of the goals for Blind Vision Impaired Center is that they would like to visit the clients to their homes and kind of like train them in kind of their neighborhood or in areas where they like to, or even take them for a drive or bike to like a location and do some trainings as well. Right now they have a location in Pacific Grove and in Salinas, and they want, with this program funding, they would like to open a new facility in Soledad, particularly because a lot of the South County clients have had trouble in the past getting to the existing offices. And so having a location closer to them would reduce that need of having to navigate the transportation system and have a less of a travel time to get to their mobility trainings and such. Then our 5th applicant is Kearns Memorial Pool. So as the project states, it's pretty straightforward transportation to receive therapeutic aquatic services. What Kearns Pool is focused on is providing these like aquatic services to folks who are usually are typically like paralyzed or have like major disability, like physical disabilities. And part of what their program consists is providing transportation subsidies for a lot of their low-income clients who otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to get to the service had they not had those subsidies, because they do charge their folks to, if their folks would use one of their vehicles that they contract out. The prices tend to be significantly high, but with this program, they would be able to provide those transportation subsidies for people of lower incomes who use the services. I believe their furthest client has been from Soledad. So what you see here on the funding amount though, is that there's a cycle 2 carryover of 70,000. And what that is basically on the next slide, you'll see that we are recommending the board to approve an extension for current school for one year extension, because they were shut down for the majority or for the beginning of cycle 2 for like about a year or so because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So they couldn't use any of their funds from cycle 2 until they were allowed to open up their facilities again. But otherwise, from cycle 3, they're receiving 78,000 on the cycle 3 portion. And so, yeah, so today we are basically asking the board to adopt a resolution that awards the funding for each of these recipients, and as well as extending the deadline for principal to use cycle 2 funding, and of course authorizing the executive director to execute agreements. So I'll pass it back to the chair to open up for any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Board members, any comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you. So this specifically for ITN, is that like a subsidized service then? So the money will go towards subsidizing the rates for seniors, is that correct?
So for ITNs, at least they wouldn't subsidize, this funding wouldn't subsidize their rates, which has been a discussion that at least the North and South County Steering Committees has had, is whether we can find ways to reduce rates. But mainly it would cover a lot of their operational costs, such as costs for professional drivers or positions and operational expenses as well for their facilities and such.
It's a nonprofit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other board members? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice presentation, Aaron. And all these projects and providers appear very worthwhile. I have a question for you and for this administration of these Measure X funds. I think they're being well spent. Do you have any metrics on how well these providers have been doing? You know, what's their measure of success in the past? Since they're all, everybody's a candidate, that's a candidate has been doing this already.
Yeah, so quarterly, we require all applicants to submit a quarterly claim along and a progress report that shows the work that they've been doing throughout the year, throughout their cycle. And typically, now that we're near the end of cycle 2, they will, clients or the recipients will be submitting a closeout report that lists, so for example, ITN would, what we have them do is submit a list of like rides provided and the kind of work that they've done throughout the cycle. And once they submit those closeout reports, we post them on the website. But we do keep in check with all recipients that in order to measure their success, we have them submit like a progress report that details the kind of work that they've been doing and some information on rides or how many people have attended their events and that sort of thing.
So is it safe to assume that everybody that is being proposed as a candidate for funding in the upcoming period has done very well in the past? Is that a safe assumption?
Yes, so far from what we've seen for the reports, they in certain areas, like they have like been doing their best and been successful in like some areas as well. What we saw from the cycle 2 is with the COVID pandemic, there were a lot of challenges as well, because there was a lot of restrictions in like what a lot of the recipients can do. But so far what we've been seeing from the latter of cycle 2 is that those kind of like number of folks attending outreach or a number of people using their ride services has been steadily going back up too as well.
Thank you, Aaron.
Any other questions or comments?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've listed the 5. Are those the only ones that applied for these funds?
Yes, they were the only ones that applied for this period.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any member of the, yes, Alejandro.
Through the chair, in regards to the areas where you mentioned Soledad a couple of times and you mentioned South County a few times, is there a breakdown of where each one of those programs, where folks are participating in these programs? As far as you saying that they do the reports of more or less how many folks participate? Is there, in the report, do they do unduplicated, and do they do the full amount, and do they do a breakdown of where they're coming from for these different programs?
For at least their progress report, at least if you want to get like down to the deeper, it's like where are the drivers, like where are riders like coming from, for instance.
Right.
We don't require them to submit like that level of detail, but in part of the evaluation process of evaluating the scores for these, one of the breaking criteria that we look for in the applications is geographical equity, whether they are addressing various parts of the county versus one secluded area. So that's part of like the scoring process that we that the review committee makes sure is to see that these nonprofits are trying to make that effort to expand to various places.
Thank you.
Any member of the public have any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Greg Hammer. You guys just voted to approve me or appoint me to Measure X committee. I just have one question regarding some of this funding, and obviously I wasn't on the Measure X when this went through. And I'm just curious if some of these programs that are being funded can be addressed by existing entities, for example, specifically MST. I know it's focusing on middle or the missing gap, the transportation gap, but would some of this funding potentially have made a difference to MST to offer these services just natively? Is that something that was evaluated or talked about, or is that even an option? Can MST even do it?
Can I answer?
We'll start with Todd, and then
Sure. The short answer is Measure X that was adopted by the voters specifically set aside these funds for nonprofits to fill gaps in transportation services. So MST has different fund sources and a different Measure Q, which has some specific things there for senior and disabled riders. But specifically, these funds are to support nonprofits that kind of provide some of the difficult areas to serve.
Sure, literally the hard places for MST to drive or any other services that exist. So this is really funding areas that cannot be done by our traditional transportation units.
Not necessarily that it's for the range of people. Some people can use MST and some people can't. Sometimes the on-demand service for MST meets people's needs, sometimes it doesn't. These services kind of fill in all of the gaps.
Understood.
And then Carl?
Yeah, I would say these services, I'm Carl Sidoric, CEO for MST. So these types of services are services that either MST cannot do with our existing fund services, or if we were to do them, it would be significantly more use of taxpayer funds. These funds are, I believe, for these specific purposes, because they're sometimes using volunteer drivers. They're sometimes using the services of other nonprofits with which MST coordinates, like Alliance on Aging, Blind and Visually Impaired Center. We're working with them together. So in doing this, we can extend our limited local resources a lot more effectively by reaching out to these nonprofits and volunteers to do some of these things that, and then for the more individualized services, and allow MST to do what it does best, doing large transfers of people. So taking 20 seniors to the Alzheimer daycare all at once. That's what we, do well at. The individual trips of a single person going shopping, they need it, but it's not necessarily MST strong suit. It's much better suited to these individual nonprofits.
So this is literally the best bang for the buck.
Yes,
Cool.
I could have said it that way.
Excellent question.
Well, I don't know if public comment is over, so I'll wait.
Is there any other members of the public? To speak on this item? Is there anyone online? No. All right. So I'll bring this back to the board for more comments and discussion.
I would just say quickly, I think this Measure X money is ours at TAMC, so I don't know how appropriate it would be to send it back to MST for any reason, if that makes sense to the board, right? So we're able to spend it. My concern is really I'm sure $750,000 doesn't go that far on these trips, but I think we should look towards, I don't know if it's next year, a report is coming about how it is fairly distributed throughout the county. And it's not one particular area receiving a whole bunch of rides, just to be, a little bit fair about it.
No, that's an excellent idea to get an update on. I think you had that direction, right? You understand it?
Yeah.
And Todd, provide an update on the effectiveness of these expenditures. Any other questions or comments? Ed?
Chair, just want to highlight that I know all the board members got this in the packet. One of the attachments is the Measure X Senior and Disabled Transportation Program guidelines that are a derivative of what the voters actually voted for. That gives the guidelines, and I think it's an appropriate use of Measure X funds. But I think the equitability of the service level is really the whole point, because Measure X funds come from the entire county. We want to make sure that we don't have places that we have forgotten about, or that we have not identified yet a place that we can assist the seniors. But the program guidelines are very helpful to see how the process goes for the selection. And certainly all nonprofits wouldn't qualify for it, because if they're not doing transportation for their seniors and disabled, then that's not their function. So we're looking at nonprofits that this is their niche and this is what they can provide countywide. So appreciate the work and the report.
Yes, just one last comment. And, for South County, I can't speak for full South County, but for the most part, we have very few nonprofits and just to begin with. And so to have nonprofits come into our area and start that focus of trying to do some of the work, thanks to Mike, thanks to Todd, thanks to other folks who in cycle 2 were asking those questions of how we can be a little bit more equitable and really get some of those nonprofits to put some focus into South County. So we appreciate it, but we would like to see those numbers and see how good those efforts are really happening. And so it would just be beneficial to continue to do that outreach and to continue doing some of that work. And so thank you also to Ian for asking for those questions.
All right.
You can't forget North County, of course.
So yes, go ahead.
I just was wanting to get a little elaboration on the criteria on how these are ranked and how that affects the funding.
Yes, so let me go back and see.
There is, okay. So, and I guess that's where my point is, the purpose and goals are the purpose and goals of TAMC.
They are the purpose and goals of the project of the applicant.
Of the applicant.
Yes.
It's how well they meet the purpose and goals of the senior mobility program, the senior disability.
Okay, gotcha, okay. I wanted to make sure I had that clarified. And then, once you rank them out here, how does that affect what the allocation of the money goes? I mean, because I see, there's a variation here in the average rank.
Yeah.
Does that affect how much, how does that really impact this?
Yeah, so how the ranking goes is that they, out of all of those criteria, their rank is dependent on the total points possible. So out of the 100,
I'm sorry, so what is possible?
Oh, out of the total points possible in the application. So out of the 100 points, their overall score is then dependent on the rank. So, so for example, Partnership for Children received the got the most points. And so it pretty much, when you get a higher score, then the funding is guaranteed based on who receives the highest score. So Partnership for Children receives the total score. Therefore, they are guaranteed that funding, first dibs on funding.
So, okay, so I guess I'm still not quite clear. It's like, I know there were only 5 applicants. And so all 5 were accepted and there's scores for them. What effect does that score have here then on how much money is allocated?
I would assume, and I'm not sure, it's based on their request for how much funding they're getting, is their request they made for the funding, and then it's based on if they're getting the full funding or not.
So they're not getting, if they're lower on the score, they don't get their full funding?
So there was a whole discussion about this. The process for the evaluation of the grant applications went through a 2-step process. One was a subcommittee made up of the Measure X Citizen Advisory Committee and the MST Mobility Advisory Committee and TAMC staff. They did the initial evaluation and ranking of the applicants. And because there were 5 applicants, they did ask for more than the amount available. And the discussion because of the rankings were not that far off, as far as there was a sequence of who was ranked higher and lower, but there was a discussion from the subcommittee and then a recommendation from the Measure X Citizen Advisory Committee to reduce their grants, all of them, by 25%.
Yes.
And so be able to fund all 5 of them at 25% less than their asking amount, versus giving the top ones 100% and the last 1 or 2 very little. So that recommendation came through and is what's before you today.
So basically, it sounds like to me that even though they were ranked, it didn't really have any impact upon according to requests.
Well, if I could, I'll just add, if you rank too low, you're not gonna get anything, right? So the ranking is actually very important. And the reduction was the acknowledgement that each service was providing a benefit for their areas that they're working on. And if I read in a report right, or maybe it was through discussion, they also had the reduction conversation with the applicants as well.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct. And they did, the subcommittee interviewed the applicants after receiving the application. They had a discussion with each of the applicants to see if they could reduce their scope of their application to match the lower amount from their request. And they all agreed that they could. So it really was a decision by the advisory committee to whether to recommend to the TAMC board to do that 25% reduction and fund all of them, or to fund the highest ranked one the most and then go down from there. Kearns Memorial Pool was the lowest ranked project. They had carryover because they hadn't been able to use their funds from cycle 2. So they received the lowest amount, and then with the stipulation that they could carry over the funds, which mostly made them whole. So the subcommittee went through this process of trying to balance all the applications and bring forward a proposal for the board to consider.
It sounds, and I understand there's a threshold that if they don't reach that threshold, they're not going to get anything. But it sounds to me that, except for maybe Kearns there, basically that the actual ranking, once you cross that threshold, didn't really have a real significant impact on what the percentage they're going to get from their request, which is fine. It's just that I don't know if it serves a whole lot of purpose at that point. And I'm also just, I see the points up there, but the points aren't really graded down here. So this is sort of different here. This is ranked. This is what I understand. The ranking that's presented to us is actually by the position that they have among the 5. While you're looking at the points, so there's an in-between step in there that's not really being quite relayed to us, but that's not so important. I'm just just wanted to get a better understanding of what was happening here, really what importance that actual ranking was really meaning, which to me, it sounds like it was minimal.
Well, one of the in-between steps was the staff confirming that what they applied for was eligible. So we.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the point. And you're scoring it by 25, 20, and 45. You're saying this one's got 75 points here under purpose, and this one's got 25. Only their position in relation to the five is really being counted and what's being presented to us. As I was saying, I didn't quite understand how the points applied to each of these. I don't know which one really ranked out best on purpose. And I can't
Oh,
remember the other.
gotcha.
You know, so-
Having the actual ranking for each of the items.
Right, you
Each-
just have sort of compilation here, but it isn't by points even, it's by their, it's by their ranking in relation to the others.
Well, finalization, yeah. So you want to see the sausage made.
Well, well, I mean, I was just trying to understand the two. I don't necessarily, I need to see the whole sausage made. It'd be a little bit better if they were a little more connected, I think, at this point.
Understood.
Yeah. At least visually for us.
Through the chair. I think we all get it. I think we all see that too, the disconnect there. And I think we all deal with it when we do CBG, right? Our subcommittee somehow end up, let's make it equal for everybody. So we go through this all the time. But I do think the 15% or the 15 number for geographic equability, so to speak, is a little low when you're talking about countywide. And so, you know, for purpose and goals, you get 25, but then to spread to spread out between the counties, you only get 15% or 15 points. You know, at the end of the day, some areas may not get anything because like I think it was just said earlier, they don't have the nonprofit down there or that nonprofit can't serve, even on the peninsula. So it's not just South County, even on the peninsula, they may not serve that area. So I just, you know, it's a year to think about it. You know, maybe, you know, the executive director could come up and just brief us next go around on.
So this is the third 3-year cycle. And after the first cycle and the second cycle, we had discussions and feedback, and we started out the cycle with a countywide evaluation of needs. And staff did the evaluation and did a report. And that was included when, I mean, I realized that this is now almost a year later from when that happened. And so that was part of the requesting the board approval of the application process and the ranking for the goals and purpose and goals was the countywide evaluation of needs did get incorporated into the ranking process for the application itself. So what the points given to the different categories was discussed when we had that, when we asked for approval to approve the releasing the application for applicants to pursue the funds.
Right. My only point through the chair is maybe the next go around, there could be some adjusting. So I think we're talking about today, so.
No, we can definitely adjust it, and that's time we always want to look at it, make sure we're doing it the way the board wants.
And then in addition to that, what Glenn had brought up as well. So when we get our information, it would be helpful to have the actual breakdown of the different categories and what they scored on that. So I think that would be beneficial to us because then we can then quickly look as well. So we'll take those two topics as direction. Unless anyone wants to include that in a motion. Have I gone to public yet?
Go ahead and move it.
I move approval.
All right.
I'll second.
We'll go with that. For clarification, did I take that to public yet?
You did.
Okay, thank you so much. First with Oglesby, second with Church. Roll call, please.
District 1, alternate Gonzalez.
Yes.
District 2, Supervisor Church.
Aye.
District 3, alternate Barba.
Yes.
District 4, alternate Anderson.
Yes, with appreciation to the volunteers who served on the committee.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rio,
Aye.
City of Gonzales,
Aye.
City of King City,
Aye.
City of Monterey,
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove,
Aye.
City of Salinas,
Aye.
City of Seaside,
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you, Eloise. Thank you, board. And just, I'm going to be leaving right now and heading out today, but I just want to say it's one of the most special things about this board is that everybody looks out for the entire county and it doesn't matter where we live. So the equity discussion has been extremely important. I appreciate that. I do apologize for leaving early.
No
Thank you, everyone.
apologies necessary.
Dave?
No apologies
Okay, you
necessary
already
at all.
handed him the gavel. Thank you.
All right, we'll get going. Okay, so next item is going to broadband strategic plan. I believe Doug, you're doing this.
Yes, good morning, Chair and board members. I'm Doug Bilsey, Principal Engineer at TAMC, and we're here to talk about broadband. And access to broadband is vital for good quality of life, economic prosperity, development, sustainability, and prosperity. Unfortunately, many of the households do not have access to portable broadband services or the skills and devices necessary to use it. And you can call it digital equity, digital divide. These are the terms we use now to acknowledge the challenges and lost opportunities that members of our community experience when they don't have access to the internet. And this disproportionately impacts our disadvantaged communities in rural areas. So it's very important to Monterey County. There's you might be saying, so that's great. What does that have to do with transportation? And really telecommuting, website service, virtual meetings, every time we promote that, we take one or more cars off the street. Most broadband infrastructure, the fiber optic that goes in the roadway, underneath the roadway system, it's right there. It's our right of way. It's an opportunity every time we look at a roadway project to further this cause. Broadband can lead to more efficient operations in bus service, signal operations, so it gets people moving better. Adding broadband elements to projects increase grant opportunities, and I think we'll talk about this in a bit. There's a lot of money out there to get in this broadband, and it's getting put in our roadway system. So you put two and two together, and it's really important to look at a plan so that when you're doing projects, you do what's called dig once. While you're putting in the pavement, while you're putting in the water system, you put that extra pipe in for fiber and you're done. It's a very small marginal cost. So it's very important to be strategic about how we go about transportation and broadband. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Maria Kelly, who's working on the Teleworks team. It's on a project, just to be clear, this is not a TAMC project, but you'll be wearing another hat at some point where Maria will be talking to you as your agency. And we just kind of want to put the pieces together here so that you can take it from there. So
how many minutes? I have a timer on, so thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate it. This is a great project for the county. I would like to call out and thank specifically Supervisor Alejo for serving on the California Middle Mile Broadband Advisory Committee. That has been a big lift for our state, and also Supervisor Lopez for the work on the South Salinas Valley Broadband Authority, which is also a great benefit to your counties move forward. So today we're talking this project, this strategic planning project funded by the RCRC. You are in RCRC County, Rural County Representatives of California, is a last mile, meaning the serve from that mid to the endpoint user. And the analysis that we are using in the framework is FCC data. I do have a team member from Teleworks on Zoom. So if we do have additional questions that are very technical, we can always pull him in to answer those for you. Why are we talking about broadband now? Doug mentioned significant funding. Some of the allocations were announced yesterday, or sorry, on Monday, 1.9, almost 1.9 billion for the state of California. So federal and state legislation is in alignment to ensure broadband for all. And some of this just highlights some of the things that these funds are targeting and the stakeholders and relationships within all of them. Specifically would like to point out that, again, rural counties, unserved, underserved areas are the priority, of which Monterey County has several. In alignment with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, actually in December 2020, Governor Newsom signed the executive order, and Broadband for All action plan was developed. That is to ensure that all Californians have access to affordable, reliable broadband devices and training to use them. And again, these funding programs, SB 56 was just one of the significant policies passed by the state. There are many others that have to do with dig once as well, and other sorts of even micro trenching. But these we wanted to highlight for your reference, and if you'd like to take a look at them later, you'll have access to the PowerPoint. Here's the action plan goals, as I mentioned: connectivity, affordability, training, all of this, and priority populations of the unserved, underserved include seniors, second language learners, disabled, veterans. These are all priority populations that really do need to connecting to the internet for quality of life. So again, while a lot of this, we're talking about infrastructure today, the end goal is access for all. So while this is an infrastructure conversation, it really is about the people at the end. So what is this team? What is the scope? The stakeholders are on the outside. You can sort of see in those boxes on the outsides how these groups are working together. And this is a very, very high level timeline and some of the project goals sequencing. We're in the middle of sort of the network design analysis. We'll do some ISP or internet service provider engagement, understand who's doing what where in the county and a little bit within your cities and other jurisdictions. This is a very, very fast project. Some of these broadband strategies must be fast so that they can be completed as the funding becomes available. So really excited to be able to get Monterey County all caught up. The county is the lead. We've been working with county staff on managing this project. And to the right, Teleworks is developing the strategy. In parallel, typically a strategy would be completed first, but in parallel, there is also a company named Tilson who is doing some design work already that will design work that has the data that is allowing county to go after some funding, as well as potentially some of your other areas as well. So happy to answer questions about that at the end. What do we mean when we're talking about scenarios? What are we analyzing? What are we looking for when we're doing a broadband strategy? These are the things we're looking for. We're looking for those opportunity zones. It is a fiber first right now mentality. The FCC, the feds, and the state are looking at the high reliability redundancy for operations and emergency services to connect your anchor institutions. So it is a fiber first, but at the same time, we recognize that a fixed wireless, a point-to-point wireless system may be the only option. And for some of the areas of our very rural, maybe it is only going to be satellite availability, but we want to make sure that we can do that analysis so that you can understand, so the county can understand, your communities can understand where we should be deploying fiber first to really build that resiliency within the infrastructure. Ongoing initiatives, like I stated, looking at internet service provider plans. Some internet service providers also saw this opportunity for funding. Again, this funding, typically, a lot of the extra funding from the feds and the state is going to look for public partnerships. They're looking to the public entities to develop public-private partnerships, but some of this funding will go directly to internet service providers as well, trying to figure it all out. The South Salinas Valley Broadband Authority, the Golden State Connect Authority, these are all of the solutions and activities that are already at play. And then where do we need to look for those gaps in conceptual designs? If there isn't an internet service provider already looking at an area within your community, if we can assess that that's not happening, but it should be happening, we're going to try to capture that for you and let you know, or let you know that there's more work that needs to be done there. Leveraging whatever existing infrastructure there is, as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but there is actually some decent middle mile fiber available in the north part of the county, looking at some of that gap in the South County and then into San Luis Obispo County, where I'm from, and look at those operating models and then assess the funding sources. Assessing the funding sources is a very challenging process to some degree, but it's important, and we will share that with you. While this is a difficult slide potentially for to really take a deep look at. I hope you can dive into it later, and I have some maps that follow. Based on the FCC fabric data maps, which is what we're working off of in conjunction with CPUC. These FCC maps have been in challenge for quite some time as they were developed based on service provider reporting. Over the last 6 to 8 months, there's been an extensive amount of work in bringing those maps more real, because a service area could be one household within a census block. The reporting is now required to identify all households served or unserved in a census block. Served or unserved is based on speed, and the quality of that service is the speed. Historically, a served household was 25 download, 3 upload. What we learned during COVID is that is not an adequate speed. So the state and the feds said we want 100 symmetrical, 100 download, 100 upload. That was modified to 100 download, 20 upload. So you'll see that green, everything green and blue means it's at least a minimum of 120 served or access to service up to 1 gigabit speed service. At the end of the day, everyone should really be planning to gig speed. Because of our future, again, smart community needs, we're going to need that infrastructure. So what we see, unincorporated areas of Monterey County, about 36,000 unserved, underserved households. That is significant. And there is funding for that to reach that first. You can see by each of your cities and communities what those percentages and numbers are. While we see some zeros in that underserved, again, that's just with what the data we have right now. I will touch a little bit on looking for more speed test data so that we can continue to feed that to the FCC. This is just some mapping based on that previous charts to show a comparison by cities or a comparison about how we broke it down by north, central, south zones and really took a look at it by zones and sort of give that picture a little bit of a different sense. Happy to go back if there's any additional questions, but again, just focusing, there's areas Delray Oaks where it says that you're fully served. There may be some additional data out there that says that's not accurate, but you can see in the unincorporated areas that that's where we see the high percentage of unserved. And that whole area that we're looking at right now is a lot of that South Salinas Valley Broadband Authority area. So looking at how to reach those community members is going to be of priority importance. So what's next as far as this project continues to go, the needs assessment and speed testing is hosted on the county website under broadband. They have a whole broadband section. They talk about the affordability programming. We'll close out the data collection. We'll send out the draft. We are required to come back to all the Board of Supervisors, and then everyone will be set, especially the county, and hopefully some of our communities will be set to go for funding. And these are just some high level current timelines on what those access to funding sources right now are for infrastructure programs. And again, digital equity programs that are very, very important to a lot of your disadvantaged community members. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it. Before I take it out to the public for questions, are there any questions by board members? Yes, Andrew.
Will this presentation be available online? I think, whatever we can do to help spread the word, especially this presentation at the moment, that way we could post it to different areas to encourage engagement.
Yes, that'll be on our website.
Okay.
That would be greatly appreciated. Engagement is always, broadband is not as exciting as I think it is. And so it has been a challenge at times to engage, but appreciate there's been some good engagement in Monterey County. So I'm very grateful for that.
Scott.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. One of the areas where Delray Oaks will not be fully served in the future is we've got a property out at the former Fort Ord. And our main artery into that area, South Boundary Road, which we're going to end up upgrading that, putting all the utilities under the road to include fiber. And it'll impact not only Delray Oaks, but also Seaside and Monterey. What types of grant funding would be potentially available for that project as we upgrade South Boundary Road? Would it be under the executive order or SB 156?
I'm happy to follow up with you and take a look at that. Again, I'm grateful that Emmanuel's on so he can capture some of that and we can follow up with Doug and try to find out a little bit more about that. I'm not able to answer that right now. It may be federal. I'm not sure, but it could be depending on who it's serving. If it's unserved, underserved areas, there could be some opportunities there.
And I think if I could, like, grantsmanship is just that. You look at the grant and you see how you can apply for it. So sometimes it has to do with scoring. So the idea, I think the takeaway, one of the main takeaways here is when you do go for grants and you do say, here, I want to put in fiber optics, you need to have a plan behind it. Because almost all grants now say, we just don't do things haphazardly. Do you have a plan that's approved, for that? And that's what this effort is about. And then when these grants come in, the money just came in, $1 billion, you will see it, available. Maybe not as a standalone, but that's where you leverage it. You say, we have a X million dollars for a road, and just for this little extra money, we can get broadband in there. So I hope that answers your questions, but when they come through, when they come clear, it's really going to be clear to have a plan and have it spelled out.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Absolutely. I understand what you're saying. But if there is additional information, I'd appreciate
Yeah,
that.
happy to
Pass it
engage.
along.
Also, it could be that there's an internet service provider that's interested in doing that in partnership. And it may, that there may not be needing additional funding. You might find the ISP provider that's like, we want in that trench now. So yeah, let's talk. I'm happy to follow up with you.
And I'm participating in TAMC staff in these discussions, so we keep an eye out for it. So when grants do come available, we'll be telling our member agencies about it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, two items. One, speaking to Scott's question, for those who aren't aware, about 20 years ago, MST was involved as the lead in developing the Central Coast Intelligent Transportation System Plan was adopted by our MPO AMBAG. And I think it speaks to perhaps some of the issues, Scott, that you're speaking to. And if you have to point to a plan in a grant application, that's one to point to. Related to that, MST some 20 plus years ago implemented a countywide communication systems for all of our buses. And we track all of our vehicles. That system is dated and the technology is moving to Wi-Fi broadband-based solutions. MST does work, the county hosts some radio communications towers with MST, and we're very interested in making certain that we have broadband connectivity for our buses as they travel between, because we do not have Wi-Fi connections or even radio connections throughout the county. And we've been in the position where a bus has broken down with passengers and the driver's walking a mile to the nearest house to get a landline. And fortunately, there wasn't a medical emergency going on at that time. It was just a mechanical emergency. So, we've been involved in moving our Wi-Fi enabled buses to parts of the community during COVID for community members to gain access to Wi-Fi and connectivity options for education. We want to be able to continue that. And so I really hope the county coordinates with MST because, between Paso Robles and coming soon, October to Gilroy again, up to Watsonville, Pajaro, we're all through there and we need that connectivity as to our passengers.
I would like to follow up with you because while we have some of that information regarding the tower, the sort of the communication system, one of the questions has been, is the county interested in fiber connectivity for any of those systems to upgrade any, or additional redundancy, but also to hopefully take a look at that plan that you're referencing would be really helpful for us.
I'll give you my card and we'll, as a former IT director in a previous life, happy to chat with you about it.
Well, we might just have to.
I find broadband exciting too.
just to nerd out a little bit more. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Hi, I was wondering if you could go back to the slide, the served and unserved. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. I understand what you're saying in terms of the speeds. But the totals, are those households?
Households.
Okay. That should be receiving service at some level. So the total is everybody regardless of what they are getting or not getting. And the 1,111 is all households for the county.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's really interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting to see that layered with what that equates to people in terms of our actual population.
Right. And that's the challenge, is that we are layering layering that FCC data over other mapping data that we're looking at as well, because we take a look at what the cities are providing us as we're able to connect and look at and then cross-reference with other census data. But this is FCC data. This is what the FCC map is telling us right now, based on the FCC fabric.
And that's not an accurate, your work is gonna
There's ongoing work
supplement
with
that
this,
and get it
correct.
better. This is not a great, accurate
Yeah.
snapshot right now, and this, part of their work is to improve that.
And part of the
dig deeper.
future, and the future work of the county is to continue to improve.
And just
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
And then
No, go ahead, Yuri.
I'm just geeking out on numbers. Go.
Right. Yeah, similar vein, which is, I think for Seaside, I think we have like 10,000, what is it, housing units, right? So it's kind of hard to tell how many people are getting service in that house, right? So I don't think you ever get that number.
Yeah.
But it is difficult to see, and maybe there's a way, how many houses are, how many, units are missing, right? But I know that's we have roughly about 10,000. And so I'm just trying to figure out how many more I have to do. But what does that underserved represent, particularly for Seaside, when it's 0.04? What, there's no number, or is that 3? What is the?
Under Seaside, it says that there's 3 households, three households that are identified, again, basically based on that FCC data.
They don't have.
That don't have
Oh,
service.
we're doing all right.
Yeah, that's the
I
thing.
think one may be my house, but I just call that out to say that it's hard to figure out the total of people. But if we can get a better number of those housing units, that's the word, housing units, that'd be good. And then I'll just have somebody from the city reach out. But I do want to say, I think, the only one that probably has money to make sure the plans are ready to go is someone like MST or a bigger group, or, something like that, because it's hard for the cities to plan. And then the plan is ready for that grant, unless we're talking about it now. Because to get the grant, you had to speak to it. But if you plan to speak to it, then you're not speaking to any other grant or any other opportunity, if that makes sense, right? And that may not be what's best for your community. So then we're not gonna take advantage of it. So I'm just saying, maybe as TAMC, we can highlight someone that we know has the money to put them in a position to take advantage of this money that's coming down, because it's gonna go somewhere, right? And so I know we chase a lot of grants. But to put ourselves in that position, if it's not coming, then how do you go back and plan again? Just FYI.
Before I take it out to the public, is there anybody else in the room here who has a question? Yes.
Yes, a couple of, just on this topic itself, when it says unserved, and I'm just looking at my city for now, Pacific Grove 87. Does that mean that they're unserved because of just the geography, or is it other reasons?
It could be geography. It's just that they don't have access to infrastructure to actually have connect, or they are served at a speed that is less than 25 download, 3 upload, meaning that is the quality of the service that they're able to access.
And I think that the digital divide, this is why I think this is a little bit deceiving. My street might have fiber available, and that's what this would say. My street has it, but then I might not have the money to afford it. And I may not have the devices, and I may not have the training. So we've given you a lot of data here, but that's a whole different discussion, because that doesn't mean there's only that many people. So this is more of the shortfalls of this. But it's significant just in its numbers there, but it goes much deeper than that before we can say we've got digital equity.
Right, this is just infrastructure. When we look at the actual number of people who within certain priority groups, that number could be significantly higher.
Any other
Let me just jump in.
questions?
That's a good point. That's what I was looking for. AT&T just did a fiber in front of my house, right? I think some of you guys may have had the same thing. I haven't paid for the hookup yet. Right? They got-
You get it for free?
Oh, and Glenn,
No, I'm just,
let's-
you know,
let's
it's
run
a-
this
they-
through the
it's-
chair,
you know how they go
guys.
right in front of the sidewalk, right in front of your house, it's there. But we haven't made the arrangements for it to come into the house, so it says, you know, we're completely done, but how do we get the resident,
To do it.
particularly the ones that can't afford it, to get it from the sidewalk? Because some of them is right in front of your house nowadays.
Yeah, just another, just fundamental question. So you started by saying fiber first, right? Isn't fiber first comparatively the most expensive option?
Not necessarily for the end user.
But for us to develop it, I'm just looking from a fiber first versus fiber versus satellite versus FWA. Between the three options, wouldn't fiber be the most expensive proposition for us to develop?
It depend, I'm gonna say it depends, but the resiliency and redundancy and the reliability and the cybersecurity of fiber is all part of why the state and the federal government is saying fiber, we're investing in fiber first. We recognize that that may not be a solution for everyone to connect, but that is the desire, and that is what is happening across the Midwest and the South. If you're watching any of the news right now, there's massive fiber being deployed and manufactured and deployed within our country right now.
And as far as new technology goes, so is it fair to say that new technology is making inroads? Like, for example, Starlink is here. You can do a lot of things with Starlink in remote areas. Are considerations being made to partner with organizations like this to further the needle?
So the technology of the technology really is at the endpoints of that fiber run. Also, all of this is being overseen by the California Public Utilities Commission. They are the ones who provide that regulatory oversight of telecommunications. Starlink is able to provide service. I believe at this time, it is not considered a telecommunications company. I'd have to go back and look at the CPUC rulings. But while it is a service, it's very expensive. It is not as reliable as fiber. And at the end of the day, it is a piece of the solution. It is not the full solution for our residents and businesses. Yeah, but it is part of it.
Glenn, next, Glenn, question.
Yeah, I think I'll just pull back on it.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. All right, is there anybody else in the room here having a question? All right, go out to the public. I think there's one person with your hand up. Who are you?
Still a hand up.
Hung up. Nobody? All right, we'll close the public comment period, bring it back to the board. This is received a report only. I think we've received the report, so adequate work has been done. If there are any questions, I think Maria said she'd be available. Maria, I would think that there probably are some questions, especially around the total of the populations there. My number for Carmel, 3,098, happens to be the exact population of the community. So I don't think it takes into consideration all the second homes or people that aren't there, registered voters. So that's my concern. Anybody else? All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it. So why don't we move on then to reports from outside agencies, transportation providers, Caltrans.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly McClendon. I'm in a temporary assignment as the Deputy District Director for District 5. I have a couple of construction project updates that I'd like to give, and then I'll take any questions. The first one, starting with our update on the Big Sur Coast slides. I'm happy to report that last week on Friday, the northern closure of Paul's Slide was moved an additional 4 miles to the south So that means that now travelers that are coming from the Monterey area can travel about 55 miles south onto Highway 1 before they encounter the turnaround at Lucia. The southern closure remains at the same spot, just at the entrance of Lime Kiln State Park. So as referenced, travelers that are coming from the south from Morro Bay or Cambria can travel north for about 47 miles until they get to the turnaround at Lime Kiln State Park. We're continuing to work 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week to work on that pulse slide, that big material slide at that location. And all coastal businesses remain open in the Big Sur area. Highway 198 reopened earlier this month on June 2nd. We had that full closure on 198 to repair damage from winter storms. And there will be a section that we're currently monitoring that while it is reopened, we are looking into it and monitoring it, and it may need future repairs. So as a heads up, it's reopened now, but is something that's still under monitoring. And finally, Highway 68, we are working on overnight paving this week. And the overnight paving is on Highway 68 is between Stewart Avenue and Sunset Drive. We're looking at that construction for the course of the next week. It's a pavement project and is on overnight hours only. We're expecting to not have closures during weekends and also to not do work and any closures over the 4th of July weekend, holiday weekend. Those are my announcements, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Kelly, is there anybody with questions for Caltrans? I just comment quickly, I appreciate 21 projects in the county, pretty significant commitment by the part of Caltrans, the state of California. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you. All right, if there are no questions for Caltrans, why don't we then move on to the airport. Bill Sable, am I correct? Is this your last meeting?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry to hear that.
You stole my thunder here. I thought I'd keep everybody's attention till the last thing, but anyhow, yes, it's true. At the airport, our traffic has been very strong, as reflected in the newscast and about how many people are traveling right now. And I think it's a fallout from the COVID epidemic being kind of over. And a lot of people are taking advantage of that to travel. And we see that at the Monterey Airport. We're getting a lot of locals. Our parking lot is full. I mean, it's more than full. And we're getting traffic from residents in Aptos and Santa Cruz. And they figured out that coming down to Monterey Airport was better than a terrifying trip down Highway 17. So we're very pleased with all that. And so I've gotten some comments about delays through our major carrier, which is into Dallas-Fort Worth with American. American has their own issues with pilot shortages and but mostly in Texas, they got some weather problems that I wouldn't want to live there, and that's slowing down a lot of the traffic inbound to Monterey. We have almost no cancellations out of Monterey and very few delays out of Monterey. But getting the airplane from Dallas-Fort Worth or elsewhere is always the issue. So don't beat us up too badly on delays because it ain't any better at San Jose. The airplane's still got to come out of Dallas to get to San Jose. We're a better solution still. Even if I'm getting off the board, I can't resist pimping for the airport here. And there's also some of the delays are just plain old FAA slowdowns. They just haven't been staffing the towers and staffing themselves the way they need to, and they're trying to move traffic too fast for a lot of new controllers out there. You see evidence of that in some of the go around information that you see where they're trying to clear airplanes to land when the other airplane isn't quite off the ground yet. So everybody's got some issues and we're kind of recovering from COVID. There are no new flights out of Monterey. We're always trying to get additional flights or additional carriers, but right now there's no new flights. We've been trying to get new flights to Denver. Denver is another place where they have a lot of problems with delays and all that. We're still trying to get more flights to Denver. Our Seattle flights have been very successful. People are starting to use that Seattle as a gateway to going to Asia, and international flying is beginning to pick up. So you think of Monterey as your connecting point for Dallas-Fort Worth, where you can go anywhere in the world, or to Seattle, where you can go to Asia pretty easily. On the board, we met with our architects here. We're starting to talk about the new terminal and the design for the new terminal. And we got the privilege of being able to pick colors and fabrics and stuff like that. But also, we're trying to develop a design that reflects our community and also our funding that's available. And as I'm speaking to you as board members and also to the residents that may be here, pay attention to what's going on at this airport. There's going to be a lot of meetings where you can attend either in person or by electronically. Pay attention. This is your airport. This is your airport. We're paying for this. With most of the new terminal itself is not being paid for by federal funds. It's being paid for by district funds. And those district funds have to come from the airlines. And we need to be very conscious of whether we're building the right sized terminal and the kind of terminal that reflects your considerations for how we want to portray ourselves. And so pay attention to lots of the availability of access to meetings about how the airport ought to look, and let your voice be heard, because it's your airport. It's the county's airport. And so, okay, this is my last meeting. I have resigned from the board effective July 1. I'm moving out of the district. And after 17 years, I finally figured out how to spell airport. And so I think it's time. And I really appreciated my ability to be here for most of my term on the board of directors, to be a part of this TAMC thing. It's been very revealing to me, and I've been able to convey a lot of information back to our board. And I appreciate the whole board and the chair for letting me participate. And if you got any questions about why an airplane landed with its gear up, I'm ready to answer that.
Bill, I want to thank you for your participation. You've been a really staunch advocate for the airport, and it's been much appreciated. 10 years of service, is that what I heard?
17.
17, I thought. I feel like that's even a little short, 10. But no, Bill, you've been great. Honestly, I think a round of applause is the bare minimum. I will be buying you a beverage today. Thank you, Bill. Carl Sidoric, MST.
Thank you. And my friend from Detroit, my own hometown, I will miss you, Bill. I'll have to find someone else to harass in the future. So with MST, we on June 10th, we held our Transit Fair and Family Fun Day at the Marina Transit Station to bring awareness of our surf project. Thank you TAMC staff for attending, as well as many community partners were there. We had 150 attendees who learned about the surf and provided input to us on things like amenities, colors of the transit station, materials to be used for retaining walls, fencing, design. And we encourage, especially citizens of Marina, who will see a bulk of the activity and new construction in their city, to go to our survey that is on slido.com. That's SLIDO.com, number 7873, and please provide us additional input on your thoughts and desires for what this will look like. Also at that Family Fun Day, we did outreach for transit-oriented development policies for the cities that are part of the SURF, including Salinas, Marina, Seaside, Monterey. We have had a number of public events. We're seeking community input on those plans. We had that at June 10th Family Fun Day, again at the Salinas Farmers Market on June 17th. And we'll be having, we're scheduled for August 4th at the Sand City Market Night to get input from community members on our transit-oriented development plans that we're working in conjunction with the cities mentioned. We were happy to receive a proclamation from the County of Monterey to our employees that referred to them as heroes for the provision of emergency services to the citizens of Pajaro during the Pineapple Express flooding events of March. I do agree, the staff and the MST board concurs with that. We had our drivers being called at 2:30, 3, 4 in the morning, and our mechanics had to get in there to pre-trip the buses to make sure they were safe to go, to get people out of harm's way, and then to onward from there onto FEMA support sites. Finally, we had a report from the civil grand jury that came out on June 14th, and we were happy to receive those results. It basically stated that MST is well-run, cost-efficient, safe, and they applauded the data-driven decision-making of our board and our staff. So we were happy to get that report, and we'll be happy to be providing a response later this month. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Never a dull moment over at LMST, obviously.
Thank you.
Anybody with questions, Carl? All right, seeing no one, why don't we move on then to Monterey Air Resources District? David, I believe you're standing in today for Mr. Stedman.
I am indeed. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Frisbee. I'm the Planning and Air Monitoring Manager here at the Monterey Bay Air Resources District. We have currently a motor vehicle emission reduction grant program that's open through the end of the week. So we're still looking for applications for these grants. They tend to be, most of the grants that applications we receive are for adaptive traffic signal control projects, roundabout design and construction, and electric vehicles. For example, some of the cities have received grants for purchasing the things like refuse haulers, all electric refuse haulers, and street sweepers. We also have our electric bicycle incentive program opening up on July 1st. We've allocated $350,000 for the electric bike program. It's a low income program that is, the applicants will receive $500 for purchase of an electric bicycle. We also have a electric vehicle incentive program that's opening up on July 1st as well. We've got funding available for purchase of electric vehicles up to $2,000 for electric vehicle, and we've got $1,000 available for a plug-in hybrid vehicle. And then for low-income applicants, those incentives are doubled. So that's the end of my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions for David? Yes, Bill.
Got one question. Thanks, Dave, for that presentation. At the airport, we had to buy a new truck, and we wanted to do an EV truck. And we found out that for $100,000, it takes a year and a half to get an EV truck. So a dealer offered us, out of state, offered us a deal on a demo they had with a $5,000 discount. But I guess that classifies as a used truck. Do your grants cover maybe a used vehicle. Because we wanted to take advantage of the grants, but 5,000 miles, maybe make it a used truck.
Yeah, we would consider a used vehicle, absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for David? Right, I don't see anything. That'll close out the period then for transportation providers. Move on to reports by board members of any agency meetings they went to that use TAMC money. But I don't think there is anybody.
I think Chair LeBar will have one that he'll be able to report on in August.
Okay, fine. We'll wait for that report with bated breath. Executive Director report. Todd.
Thank you. I don't normally make announcements ahead of actions, but the California Transportation Commission is meeting this afternoon and tomorrow. And there are quite a few things that relate to TAMC going on. One is the $9.2 million award for construction for the Forteg segment, for segment Del Rio Oaks and Seaside. So we're looking forward to that action, and that corresponds to our discussion earlier today and the actions taken by the board earlier today. Another one is a request for a 20-month allocation time extension for the Monterey County Rail Extension Project, the construction of that. We've been working through the difficulties of working with Union Pacific Railroad, and we've finally gotten some traction and feedback from them, and hopefully we'll get more and be able to continue to push forward. But we needed that time extension to continue that work. So thankful to have that extra time from the CTC. There's also a 12-month additional time extension for the 156 Castro Boulevard interchange project. So there's been a lot of work in the background with CTC staff to be able to get this time extension. And we're still looking forward to working with PG&E to get their job done so that we can meet this 12-month extension. I think this 12 months is going to go by very quickly if PG&E doesn't come through soon. And then we have a couple public outreach events coming up on Wednesday, July 15th at 1:30 at the Shell gas station in Marina. Will be the Imjin Parkway widening and roundabout project kickoff celebration. So that project is starting, ready to go to construction. So we're excited to celebrate that. And then on July 19th, Wednesday, we're going to have an open house for the State Route 68 project, starting at 4:30 at Laguna Seca at their track pavilion, the hospitality pavilion. We have a postcard for that event on the dais in front of you. And this is just an initial public meeting. It's been a while since we've been able to go out to the public on the project. The draft environmental document is scheduled to be released for the public in September. So this is just an initial meeting to start talking about it and engaging with folks and letting them know where the project's at before that document's available and giving them time to be prepared for the document. So please join us if you can, starting at 4:30. And then I just want to announce or remind the board, we have 2 transportation planning positions that are out for recruitment, and the deadline for application is July 6th. So if you know anyone that would be a good fit for TAMC, please send them our way. Information on that is on our website. And finally, close with a reminder that we do not have any meetings in July. So have a good break from TAMC and look forward to seeing everyone in August.
All right, thank you, Todd. Are there any questions of Todd? All right, well, if there's anything that you want to put on comments for future meetings, please don't hesitate to speak up. You've got a extra month to go ahead, get anything on the agenda you might want. So that noted, we stand adjourned at exactly 11 o'clock. Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's true. Nice meeting you. You want to-